My parents, all three of them, have contributed to the nature of this project because I've learned from them and for the things that they pursued, what they stood for. For women's empowerment and independence, I learned from watching my mother with her women's groups as we lived in different areas of Africa. And those different areas in Africa where we lived was due to my stepfather, Hans Andersen from Denmark, who married my mother when I was only 2 years old. And he had different projects sent out by Danida, MS, and CEDA, and NORAD, which are the development agencies from Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. And the projects that he worked with were soil conservation, irrigation, and cooperatives, and animal husbandry as well. So, as for my real father, my bloodline, Polycarp Chirwa, Donald Polycarp Chirwa, who is a prince from the Dlamini family of Swaziland, as well as a prince from the Chiozos in Katabe. His main contribution to my understanding of this project was that he was an advisor to the great Chris Hani. He was a strategy advisor for Chris Hani, who was an anti-apartheid activist. So I'm born into the struggle. My mother's stepfather, who is Mtawale, although my mother was Makukula, she grew up as Mtawale. Goodwin Mtawale. He was, I believe, the first African man to own a car in Zambia. He was originally from Malawi but moved to Zambia like many Malawians did. I will talk about the role of Malawi in the liberation of Southern Africa in a second. But just like Kaunda, our first president, my grandfather is originally from Malawi, and we are related to the Kaundas, because then you'd have the Mutawale, you'd have the Kaundas, and you have the Nkomas. Okay, and that is Likoma Island as well as in Katabe and Dambo. Anyway, back to Mark. He was the first man to have a motor car. Not only that, but he worked for government printers under the colonials, which means that he was at the center of the finalization of whatever propaganda or information that the nationalist movement had, which means that the final meetings before they committed something to be printed, whatever these leaders who were fighting for freedom in Malawi, not in Zambia, were planning. That time it was under Harry Nkumbula, and Simon Kapwepo was there as well, and Kenneth Kaunda, who became president, was the secretary. And my grandfather was a member of, I think it was called ANC at that time. We had an ANC. It became UNIP later, but at that time it was called the ANC. And so he was a member, my grandfather was a member, and he'd be quietly sitting there and getting the final information before taking to the printers, and then they would disseminate the information across the country, you know. So that's why I love print and I love this type of work. I love publishing. I love publishing. It's in the blood. And I love putting things into words and that create this statues and structure and procedure and process, so that everybody can take a part in it, whether it's going to go into a legal process or a project management process, or just a documentation process or a teaching process, you know. All those things are very important. That's why I do things the way I do. What more is there to add? The content of my father and my stepfather, when he started with animal husbandry in Kasama, northern Zambia, which is where my destiny became cemented with Denmark. He was working with the idea of replicating the Danish farmers cooperatives